Hi, my name is Joanna McElnay, and I am a community manager at Creative Spirit. We are a nonprofit dedicated to placing people with disabilities in fair wage roles at incredible forward-thinking companies across the globe.
Cool, thanks. Hi, I'm Eric Jacobs. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at VaynerMedia. We are a global full-service advertising agency. I focus on helping brands learn about and thoughtfully experiment with emerging marketing technologies, things like AR, VR, Web3, Metaverse. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation today.
I'm Cheryl Overton. I'm the founder and chief experience officer of Cheryl Overton Communications. We are a creative strategy advisory. We help brands talk to multicultural communities, and that might be ethnic diversity, religious diversity, people with disabilities, LGBTQ communities, people over 50, people under 10. If you think it's a niche audience, it's not niche, it's the majority, it's everybody. But we specialize in that, and we do a tremendous amount of diversity, equity, and inclusion work with brands and corporations and institutions. I would love to say that most of it is proactive and uplifting campaigns. We do a bit of that, but a lot of it is cleaning up and helping people write the course. So I'm excited to be here and talk about how we can use the metaverse for good.
Hi, I'm Carol Pierre-Draves. I'm the EVP and Chief Marketing Officer of the IAB. We are a trade association, so we represent about 700 member companies, everything from brands to agencies to publishers to ad tech. And what we do is we field really important critical research to the advertising industry. We create training programs around DEI and inclusive leadership programs. And what else do we do? A ton of different things. So, but I'm really excited to be here with Infileon.
Thank you so much. Everybody here is in their own spaces defining the future. So Eric, let me start with you. Talk a little bit about the future and the metaverse and what you're working on, and then we're going to wind our way into an inclusion conversation very shortly.
Cool. I like to be the hot takes person on a panel, so we'll just start off that way. There are a lot of questions about what the metaverse is or what it will become, and I lead by saying the metaverse doesn't yet exist. If you think about it, it should just be the next natural evolution of the internet and how we engage with it. And there are a couple of pillars that, as these technologies mature and improve, they will form the metaverse. And those pillars are AR, VR, Web3, and NFTs, and virtual worlds. And the fourth is less technologically defined, but also important, and that's community. But if you think about those as circles in a Venn diagram, they're all sort of converging towards this one fully fledged vision of what the metaverse will become. And so to give an example of what that might look like, I might be playing a game in an immersive world in the future, and my character is an NFT, and I'm playing in some sort of AR, VR experience, and the people I'm playing with I've never met in the real world, but they're my community online. So that's a vision of what it might look like. The issue is that the technologies aren't mature yet for all of these things. And so if you were to compare this to, for example, where we started with Web 2, we were still using Blackberries with physical keyboards, like not even 3G network connectivity, no HD cameras on phones, no app store, no startups and companies developing software for the space. And so like those technologies have emerged and grown and matured and reached scale to define what Web 2.0 is, the technologies that I outlined will mature and the experiences will improve, and that's where we'll end up in the metaverse in the future.
Well, since you're off to a hot start, just one prediction. When do you think the metaverse will be inculcated into daily life? When will everybody participate?
I think it's really hard to say. I think certain players in the space have an agenda to get us there, namely Meta, and hence the rebrand. And the reason for that is they realized that the primary way that we interact with the internet today is a smartphone, and they never had a hardware platform, and so they were able to be disintermediated by Apple and Google in terms of tracking and all those sorts of things. And so their play is maybe the next way that we will primarily interact with the internet is AR, and so they wanted to really lean into making that a space that is being developed. And so I think the question is, when will a relatively cheap and powerful and compelling consumer hardware product be designed that is good enough for people to want to buy it and spend a lot of time there. I'd say it's probably 5-10 years, if I had to guess.
I would agree.
So we have some time to work on how to make it perfect. Carol.
Now, I would agree with that too, because when I think about Metaverse now, it's really, the on-ramp is really about gaming. So everyone's getting in through these gaming and entertainment experiences, so Roblox and Fortnite. And, Fortnite to me seems to be the closest to the Metaverse right now. You're gaming in Fortnite, you can watch a concert in Fortnite, hang out with your friends in Fortnite. But then you've got everyone else developing too. So you have Decentraland, you've got the Sandbox, Microsoft, Eric talked a little bit about hardware, and Apple's looking to come in the hardware game as well. And obviously Meta has spent about $10 billion in 21 on AR and VR, and they're set to spend another $78 billion by 2022. So they're definitely leading in the race.
But if I might, I think whenever a new platform emerges, we're testing and learning, we're trying. So we're respectfully to the technologists, and it can be a better experience. I'm seeing, especially this week, so many brands and institutions and government organizations actually using this space to try to, if not promote diversity, neutralize some of the biases that we have. There's a great campaign that I had an opportunity to judge called The Breakaway out of Belgium. It uses e-cycling as a platform to give people who are imprisoned an opportunity to cycle with people outside in the out world, and it's a prison reform issue. Their Minister of Justice got in on it. It is something that can be replicable. So I get it. It's not perfected. It's not clunky, but it's a start. And maybe there's a way that we can do this to mitigate some of the biases that we would do. It's safe. They're anonymous, but they have a sense of community with a shared interest. So, from a lifestyle perspective, we're starting something, and I think we'll continue to improve it.
Yeah, I love that. I just want to give another example, too, since you mentioned that, Cheryl. I was just with PwC, which is one of our partner companies, too, on their yacht. Oh, God, I said that, France. I was on their yacht for a meeting, and they shared with us a really great program they did for their employees to create empathy. And you put the headset on, and you walk into a space, and it's as if you're coming to a meeting, and the person says to you, "I told you to use the service entrance." And you're sort of like, hey, I'm here for a meeting. And it was just to create that sense of empathy so people understand what people who are not like them go through when they walk in the room. It's just, I thought it was great. I was like, this is awesome. They're rolling this out to all of their employees in hundreds of countries.
I think that's amazing. Joanna, we had the opportunity just last night, Eric participated as well, in a fundraiser for Creative Spirit on the Vayner yacht, and the party was meant to be super inclusive. So here we are talking yacht and inclusivity. I'll stay there for a minute. But the party also happened in the Metaverse. What do you think that does for a nonprofit? What do you think that experience was like? And both of you, please jump in.
I think what was really exciting about the Metaverse collaboration for our fundraiser last night, and what it really opens up in terms of accessibility, is for individuals that can't access Cannes, right? We talk a lot about the price of admission to arrive at Cannes in person, to even get onto a yacht. Most individuals with a physical disability cannot, because there are no ramps onto the yachts. And when you actually walk around Cannes, I saw one ramp, and that's only looking at physical disability, right? We also talked a lot about this week invisible disabilities, which is something we focus on a lot at Creative Spirit. And I think what I loved about the Metaverse space that we developed, and actually it's funny because I grew up playing Second Life, which I feel like is the predecessor to Meta Life, actually.
I'm like, this is very Sims.
I was like, is this new? I don't know. So
it's the second coming of Second Life.
Is it? Yeah, exactly. So, and same with Fortnite and all those things, and all these kids are like, oh, it's the first time it's happening. I'm like, really? We had much more advanced avatar technology about 12 to 15 years ago. But I'm excited to see the stick-figured imagery that's coming out on the Metaverse, and I'm excited to see that develop to be more inclusive as well. Because I think what we're saying is, the world is not perfect, and our Metaverse will not be perfect. So to expect that, I think, is a little naive. And from a nonprofit perspective and an inclusivity perspective and an accessibility perspective, the internet actually isn't that accessible either. So I think some of the things that we want to talk about today and what we're going to get into is how do we open the doors to the metaverse, to the individuals that don't have access to the internet? And then also how do we create spaces like we did last night, which I think is a great beta test, that people can enter and experience life in places that they wouldn't be able to access normally, either because of the cost of traveling there, the mobility issues that I just mentioned, or even there's a variety of different things I can think of, but knowing how to get onto the internet in general. So a knowledge barrier as well. So it was really interesting. It's a good first step, and I think I'm curious to see how it expands.
Likewise.
All right, she said it all. I think you mentioned some brands doing it well today. Feel free to expand on those, but who do you think is going to do it well? Who do you think is, I saw a very unlikely VR experience. We did one here, but I also saw the San Francisco Police Department use VR to train their officers in terms of rape victims. And it actually created a very profound effect on the police organization. And you can imagine what that means, right? So that was surprising to me. Have you seen any surprising activations and/or do you have any predictions in terms of which brands other than Meta will jump on it first?
I'm not sure if it's surprising, but I heard this week at Cannes as well, MasterCard talked about a program that they just did. They launched, I think it was on Tuesday, and I don't want to botch the name of it, but I think it was True Self, and it was designed...
Is it True Name?
True Name is their credit card,
Right. Oh.
and then the True Self is sort of like the evolution of it. But I'm glad you mentioned that too, because one of the things with brands is when you're jumping into this, you have to make sure that it's authentic. And I know we say this word all the time, but it's authentic and true to who you are. So they jumped in with True Self, which is a safe place for LGBTQ people to come together, especially we're Cannes, but it's also Pride in June, to come together and be able to celebrate who they are as themselves. They also created an opportunity to write stories to your younger self so that you can hear like, hey, what it's going to be like when you're actually older and everything's okay in this world. And they talked about it as it being a next step to their True Name card, which was super smart because that was something that they created a while ago. So I think MasterCard's just doing great stuff in the space.
I love to hear that, because one of the things I'm observing, and it's not to be critical, but I think that sometimes the brands are not doing enough yet. Like, so I see a lot of the spirits companies, okay, it's a bar in the metaverse, or, I get it, but it doesn't feel like it's even pushing the envelope at all. So I'd like to see more innovation. So I like that because it's giving an interactive experience, but it's also, there's a heart pull there. There's some content that make you think. I'd like to see a little bit more push. The bar in the metaverse, I'm good with. One of the things that I think, and I'm not sure if you did this at your fundraiser, but I'm seeing a lot, and I'm intrigued by it, with NFTs and sort of using the metaverse to sort of demystify that. I think everybody's talking about NFTs, but there are very few people who actually get it and understand, I think. I think we all want to act like we are experts at it. I have no idea. I stay confused, and I learn something new every day about it. But I've been seeing some campaigns where in the metaverse, we're using, the NFTs are currency, and then it is paying me back somehow in my real life experience. It's sort of closing that loop and making the definition a little bit more rich and deep. So I'd like to see more of that. And thinking about nonprofits, I think that would be a wonderful way to fundraise and to reach by offering NFT experiences in the outside world, but that help people educate them in the real world, about how that's working. It's all one world, I guess.
I can build on that last bit. And so one narrative that we talk about is from Web 1 to Web 2.0 to Web 3, it's getting easier to communicate and express oneself. With Web 1, the only way to do that was really being able to code and program and develop a website. With Web 2, that got much easier with things like blogging and social media, and even things like Squarespace that make it really easy to build an online presence. And so if in Web 1, my publicly facing presence was a website. In Web 2.0, it's my social media profile. In Web 3, we think it's going to be the connected wallet that has all of my NFTs that one, they're going to have utility. So this is what I use the NFTs that I have for, but they also are for self-expression. And so why I wanted to build on that is because if I believe in a charitable or philanthropic or just a good cause, I can buy an NFT that publicly says that I support this, and people know by looking in my wallet, this is something that I care about and something that I support. So that virtue signaling, that self-expression element is something that we think will be very important for NFTs.
I just want to mention that it's so interesting that you said that, and I wasn't planning to talk about this, but our Infillion team, who does a lot of work in gaming, et cetera, built a We Can app. We had beacons all over the Quasset on a lot of activations, certainly on Vayner's, and we accumulated tokens, and all of those donations, there's a ticker here when this isn't up here, and I think people were stunned to think that we were, depending on the number of tokens that we put in your wallet, we're giving that money to Ukraine refugee relief, and I think people just didn't believe it was free. It was kind of, is that all I have to do? And so I think you're right, Eric, as we move through this universe, there are so many more ways to unlock good, but not just a shameless plug for our We Can app and all we've done at Infillion around, giving back, but most especially, I think it's going to unlock new kinds of virtue that we haven't thought about before. So I just want to throw that in.
That's a brilliant way to put it. And I was also thinking, as the three of you were mentioning, a lot of what nonprofit work is bringing shared experiences into one room and then asking for money, as you mentioned, Cheryl. And I think what's great about the Metaverse is we can design those spaces to be as realistic as we want them to be. And some individuals cannot actually empathize without experiencing or putting themselves in someone else's shoes. So as marketers, I think it's a really great opportunity to learn how to be someone else for a moment, but also to find refuge from the world that's getting a little cluttered, right? It's a space that we can design to either be as similar to the real world, if we want to share an experience that's, for example, learning about microaggressions, if you've never experienced this before, talking about racism, lots of different things. And I think that educational opportunity is unlimited when you really get down to it. And then adding in those pieces of your funnel, I mean, there's so many ways. I've come from nonprofit background and for-profit experiences, and I think there's more ways that we can work together in both spaces. And I think that this is a new space where we can beta test that. And I think that's great because then whatever we learn from a metaverse standpoint, we might be able to bring to the real world, and that's where real change happens too.
We were fortunate enough this week to come together, and everybody is just reveling, I think, in the face-to-face. Hopefully it's been a safe environment all week. What do you think is going to happen next year where we have sort of a virtual world to participate and, gather? What's going to happen between now and then? A little bit of a bonus question. Any thoughts about what you'd like to see walking out of here as it relates to this world? And then, of course, getting back together physically.
From my perspective, I mean, it's been amazing to be back in real life with everyone. I mean, make no mistake, it's kind of like a good high school reunion. You're seeing people again, and we're all wearing our badges, and we haven't seen each other in a couple of years, some of us, and you might look different. Life has been different, and it's all good. So this spirit and this energy that we've been sharing and has been great. What I will say is it's also given wind so much collaboration. I get it. We're here to be with our clients and do those things, but I have had a lot of interesting discussions around brand work, creativity, technology. How are we using this for social justice? Like, how can we get together? Because we did talk, and there might have been rosé, but we put some things on a napkin. What I'm hoping is happening right after this is how are we then solidifying that and coming together so that when we get here next year, we could talk about what we did in the intervening time. So that's important to not forget that we started to do some really good ideation, again, and the kind of thing that only happens in real life, but we can continue the conversation virtually and meet back here in a year.
That's great. I love that. And you're right. Coming together has been fabulous, coming back to Cannes. I keep saying, we were here last year, and I'm like, no, it was 2019. Time flies. What I'd like to see happen between now and the next time is education. I feel like there's a lack of understanding and education around all the different things that go into the metaverse, the cryptocurrencies, NFTs, all of these things we've been talking about. You know, right now with women, we all know that the metaverse is really driven and built by all of these creators, right? There are about 20% women who are creating NFTs. And then when it comes to NFTs of color and with disability, those sell for less money than NFTs from someone who is white. So that needs to change. Education needs to happen. I think everybody needs to do their part. Small shameless plug for IAB, but we have, like I said, our diversity and equity inclusion program. We also created a digital apprenticeship program where we're working with our membership companies to understand what are the skills and experiences that you need in digital in general, in ad ops or digital marketing, things like that, and to help the next generation sort of learn those things, because brands and agencies and folks are going out and trying to find people to do these jobs, and they can't find them. And they're only going to the same schools all the time, right? And they have to have this credential. Well, not everyone has to have a college degree. You don't have to have a finance background. You can train and develop a learning program. So what we did is we developed this 12-month program. It's an on-the-job training program where we're teaching people about digital media. So, and to me, that translates to folks coming up in the metaverse as well. So as long as we start teaching and bringing people, I think that'll help us have a more equitable group of people behind the scenes developing the metaverse of the future.
I've had the honor of hearing a lot and participating in that effort, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. I think it's a really good point, because we can all agree that a lot of the experiences we have seem to be driven by, funded by a certain subset of people. And I think it's less about, hey, make stuff that is representative and feels good for everybody, and more, how can we empower people from different backgrounds to make things that feel authentic to themselves. So I see your education and raise you to empower people from underrepresented backgrounds to build and become creators in the space.
Yeah, I mean, that's incredible. My brain is whirling with ideas. If you can extrapolate that and scale that, that's incredible. And I think that's an amazing note. And even just thinking about what Eric was just talking about, raising the bar, right? There's just so many opportunities, right? Once you open a new space, it can be a safe space. It could be your oasis. It could be your education opportunity. It could be your internship. I mean, we talk about people with disabilities all the time that are not given the skills to even receive an internship when they come out of high school, elementary school, whenever you want to say it is. They're graduating to the couch. And the reason they're graduating to the couch is because of bias. It's because of no work experience. What if they had a job on the metaverse? Would that count as the same as a real world opportunity? Could we put that on our resumes? And I think those are really exciting opportunities to build space for people that have been constantly segregated and excluded. Anyone that has been segregated and excluded.
Fantastic. I love educate, empower, action. Action's my favorite word. This is amazing.
I would add just accessibility, because that's what we're talking about as well.
Beautiful.
That's where it can be accessible.
Thank you. I have one last question, and then we're going to turn it over to questions from the garden. My last question is, what should we leave behind? If we get a fresh start, I've read a lot about the metaverse and Web3 being a little bit of a fresh start. What should we leave behind? What don't we need?
Ego.
Be bold. It's all right.
Do we need to bring our egos with us as we go forward? I think that's the basis of so much too, because we're talking about builders who start as humans, right? We're talking about a lot of technology, but we're all humans, and we're all on a journey together to grow in the metaverse or in person, right? And I think the work, at least in the work that we do, is always about staying grounded and learning how to put the ego on the shelf and learn how to do good without expecting much in return, right? And I think that would be incredible if we can learn that we have achieved so much in many ways and many platforms. That's wonderful, but there's still so much more work to be done. And that's humbling. And to remember that every day is a good place to start, I think.
Yeah. One thing that's discussed around Web3 is ownership of our own data and privacy. And if you think about social media, the idea is that we are not the users. We are the product, because the various social media platforms make money by essentially selling our identity so that we can get targeted advertising. And in Web3, the idea is that our incentives are more aligned, and we own our data and can monetize it in ways that we deem appropriate. And so I think that shift, moving from not understanding or not being in control of how our data and identity and privacy are leveraged online to having much more transparency and potentially being able to profit from our own data and identity. I think that's something we can leave behind.
I think we could leave behind inauthenticity. I think that this gives us an opportunity to really be the person that you really are intended to be. I think that there's a lot of artifice. Sometimes we feel we must, particularly people from some of the marginalized communities, we feel we must behave a certain way. We must look a certain way to be accepted. We must take a certain path to achieve a degree of success that somebody else prescribed. I'm hoping that as these things open up, that your authentic self truly, I know people put that in brochures, but I hope that your authentic self can truly fly free, and that you can live truly, walking your purpose in the new world. What is it? Web3, right? There you go. Yeah. I'm learning.
I love it. That's great. No, I love that answer. I would say, I think the thing that is not going to get left behind, I'll start with that, is representation. I think we're all having these conversations so early, and it makes me so happy. I feel like I've heard many conversations about this lately, about representation and Web3 and Metaverse, so I'm excited about that. And I'll give a funny plug, too, for Infillion, because I know you guys do some amazing ad executions. So what I would say is, I'd like to leave behind really bad ad experiences and those things that follow you around the web after you've already bought the pair of shoes. So I do not want to see that happening to us. So great ad experience is what I'd be looking forward to, and hoping that Infillion will be at the charge.
Let's take some questions from the audience. You need a mic? Here. Sorry to make the comment get wrong.
I know, it's getting hot.
Thank you. Actually, I want to follow up exactly on what you guys were just talking about, because when you think about where it can, talking about creativity, and right now some of the experiences that I've seen from an advertising perspective in the metaverse are literally digital billboards. And I'm trying to think, what does creative look like in a metaverse? How do you guys see it outside of traditional banner ads on a digital billboard or a bar, just, like a simple bar? I'd love to kind of just hear your thoughts. And then just the second piece of that is, think of an agency's perspective. How do we transact? Is it going to be impression-based? Is it going to be guaranteed engagement? How should we start thinking about that?
Yeah, I can start. I think creativity looks like making sure that you are in constant contact with who your audience is, so that you are tapping into their passions and what they want to do, and because when they're coming into the metaverse, as Eric said, and I think everyone said too, it's yourself, right? You're being your authentic self. So you want to have experiences that are going to add to that, create value. So there needs to be a proper value exchange, and there are a couple of brands who are doing that. I mean, as simple as Chipotle, it's sort of like remember the offline to the online. So Chipotle, what they did is they created an experience, I believe in Decentraland or one of the metaverses, and gave the opportunity for people who were visiting their experience to get a voucher for real life food outside the metaverse, right? So you're giving them a value. So they're doing something fun, you're tapping into their world. Vans did something like that. They created a skate park, same thing. You were able to earn currency for activations that you did in the park. So I think it's really about doing something that's giving back to that person so that there's an earned experience.
I was going to say the same. I think the handshake is important, because why do I want to? The interface is clunky. It's not, the most visually appealing yet. Why do I want to do that? So I think that handshake between the things I'm passionate about here, having that opportunity to express it or share it or extend the story, I want to see more of I want to see the ability, I want to see the storytelling enriched. So I'm walking through it, yes, and I think that should all feel a lot more immersive and experiential. But I want my story to come out. I just saw this case that was presented about the first unhoused person on the Metaverse and his journey and his story and what does it mean to be unhoused in the Metaverse, and using this as a way to talk about some of the issues of homelessness around the world, but that this is also something that we're carrying with us. We haven't solved it. So I think that the storytelling might be the creative. Maybe you'll receive that interest in a different way.
Cool.
I think we have a question here.
Hi, my name's Paul. I'm an independent consultant. My question is to Joe, but I'm sure everyone else will have an opinion. Just because we can do the metaverse doesn't necessarily mean that we should be. We're talking about the younger generation who may very well be on a screen 24/7, having the pressures of Balenciaga. Their friends have Balenciaga skins. They can't afford things like that. When they were playing football, they were all in the same kit. There wasn't very little in the way of they were all on a level playing ground. Do we also have the potential danger of diversity completely going in not happening at all in regards to you don't know who you're talking to? I feel like we have a potential to make things worse than they are currently now in the real world. And if that is a possibility, and I firmly believe it is, how do we protect our younger generation and those that are have either visual or non-visual disability?
Wow, that is a fabulous question. You know, I have a few thoughts running through my head. I'm going to break down what you just asked because there was a few different things in there. The first piece that you mentioned that's springing to mind is how do we protect our kids, right? And I think, look, everyone has had something. If you're in my generation, you either have a diagnosis of some sort of disability, you have depression, you have anxiety, you have something, right? Yes, of course, it's an opportunity for the metaverse to become that. I think we have to start thinking about mindsets, about our mindsets as we demonstrate them to our children. And I think we also have to remember that our children are more capable than we realize, and giving them space to grow. We don't do that enough. And we don't give them independence enough sometimes. I think we need to provide a space that's safe, as you mentioned, in terms of being our authentic selves without repercussions. Because a lot of times when we think about disability and disability disclosure, which is a lot what we talk about, there's repercussions. We're going to lose our disability funding. We're going to lose access to services that I need to survive in this world. We're talking about you saying the classism of different brands being an elitist structure that's being passed on to the next generation as well. We have to think about the people developing the metaverse. Who is writing the code, and what are their shared experiences, and how can we make them safe in their own spaces, in their workplaces, so that it's sort of a trickle down, but I don't like that word because it's very hierarchical. I think it needs to grow naturally, and we need to nurture instead of think about policing our kids. And I think the metaverse gives a space for every person to be who they would like to be and experiment. And it's okay to make mistakes. I think we forget. I think our generation is sort of perfectionists by default because we don't get to see anyone fail anymore online. And it would be nice to see people fail and be more authentic online. So I think I agree with Cheryl. I think we need to start talking about the stories that are a little bit deeper and harder to understand. And I think we need to start earlier with our kids. I don't think we talk about hard things early enough. And speaking from my own experiences, we all have interesting things. And it's funny, most women talk about the struggles that they go through. So I try not to do that. But I think we all go through struggles, and making that the storyline is very important on the online as well as in person, and having that space to be vulnerable. And if we're able to provide a space like that on the metaverse, then I think we've succeeded. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it brings a lot more questions, but that's for another time. Thank you.
Unless anybody has any other questions, I'd love to say that Oh, more questions. All right. No, please, don't be quick.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kristen Marquecho with De Janeiro Communications. I have a 13-year-old son, and when you talk about education, and by the way, he's on Fortnite, he's doing it all in the metaverse already, right? But as you talk about education, it strikes me as how do I get him involved in that metaverse development, right? You talked about training in corporate settings, but like, have you heard of any great institutions for the 13 to 18-year-olds who in 10 years will be in the market working, right? That's the generation who should be learning this now to get ahead of it, right? So I'm just curious, if you know of any, I'd love to know, but I don't.
So this is such a opportunity, and I have a client, Lucasfilm Unlimited, and they are going through this not specifically to the metaverse, but frankly around all behind the camera in the studio creation. And really, that's the generation. Like by the time they're in college or in film, it's too late. Like that's the generation. So we've just been working on a program called Get in the Door. It's to help young people when they're in high school really learn about all of the technical career opportunities for them in the entertainment space. Now they cross everything from gaming to film to consumer products, et cetera. But it is an opportunity to educate them because all too often they're playing these games, but they don't think about that as an opportunity for them. Like, oh, I want to be the celebrity or the athlete that I'm pretending to be here. But no, you could actually be the technologist. You could actually be the visual effects person or the artist. So in doing that campaign and creating it, we did a lot of research with schools and institutions and found there was a real void. So if there are any institutions listening, that's an opportunity because that's the right sweet spot where you have to get them.
Yeah.
It's like the game around the game.
Yeah. But ask your son to check out Get in the Door. Maybe he might go out west and do that.
Yeah. I would just ask what speaks to your son and what does he gravitate towards, because there are all sorts of opportunities. These virtual worlds, they're humongous creator economies where you can create things and experiences, and that could be something he's interested in. If he wants to go down the technical route, he could learn how to code in Solidity, which is the programming language for Ethereum, which a lot of people think is going to be the blockchain that wins and drives a lot of these things. And you should look at what Solidity engineers are getting paid right now. It's absurd. So that would be a great future career if he's interested in the.
She's writing that down.
Solidity is the programming language. If he's interested in the hardware space, he could start to figure out what makes sense in terms of the AR VR technology that's being developed. And I think the last and perhaps most important pillar is community. And there are going to be all of these communities popping up around shared interests, passions, and the ability to become a community organizer and leader is going to be incredibly, incredibly important in the metaverse going forward. So I just ask which one of those paths seems to resonate the most.
Eric, I think you should start a university with those paths on the metaverse next. That's my challenge to you, because I would join. And I also think that this, as well as universities, but I think how many corporations are here, sitting here right now? Which one of your intern groups could be on the metaverse this year? That means that you don't have to worry about visas. You don't have to worry about housing. You really just need to make sure that they have access to a computer and a stable internet, which is a feat in itself. So I'm not belittling it. But I do think that there's an opportunity to create internships, and I think this conversation has inspired me quite a bit because so many people don't even get their leg in the door. And if you don't have the right credentials on your resume, there is no key to that opportunity door. And how do we start using the metaverse as the key to have access to these already existing opportunities? And we see the same people moving from company to company, different roles, same person. How do we crack sort of this creative inbreeding, is what I've been calling it this week, and start investing in our youth, who are the next generation that are going to be bringing that next step for us. So I think we have an idea here. I think we need to have an internship program on the metaverse through VaynerX.
Chat more either offline or online in the metaverse.
Yes, sir. I kind of want to do that, actually. I think that would be pretty cool. And we should film it and do a story about it and then post it on Google.
And let the IAB scale it.
Exactly. That's where my mind went.
Jinx.
Action right here. Anybody else? Oh, Stephen.
Yeah, hi, Stephen Griffith. I run a couple of projects, a young entrepreneurs platform, along with a charity working with young people in London. I think we have a lot of problems in the real world, and I think that we can't be naive to not think that we're not going to get many problems in the metaverse. Safeguarding is massive in the real world. It's going to be a problem in the metaverse. A little while ago, I watched Ready Player One, and there's no doubt that, yes, it's a film, but there's many things in that film that will become a reality if the checks and are not done well. But we will get problems. You've all alluded to that, and I think I'm just hoping everyone's thinking very carefully around safeguarding, because it's easy to hide, it's easy to screen, it's easy to do many things, and the young people are ahead of some of the thinking that's out there at the moment. They're already ahead of it. So, I'm just wondering how you've explained a lot of this anyway, but how you guys see that, and if there's any schemes going on at this moment in time in development that are going to help protect this.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thank you, or statement too, and mine's more of a statement as well. That I think safety is really paramount, especially as we head into this new, world or worlds of the metaverse. And there needs to be some measures put in place. I mean, that's the beauty of the metaverse, is it's the whole idea of that it's the freedom to create, but then you have the flip side, you have the safety issues as well. So I think brands and agencies and creators are all going to have to work together and figure out some way to self-regulate, put policies in place. I mean, there have been things that have happened to women in the metaverse already. If you've read about those things, I mean, it's kind of horrendous what happens, and we have to find a way to come together and figure out what those policies, safe words, escape hatches, reporting, everyone goes and runs over to that person. Like, we have to figure out how to take care of that. And safety is something that's a conversation that I believe will be happening more and more, if it isn't already happening now. But I'll let my fellow panelists share if they know of stuff.
Yeah, I think one of the key issues is trust. And if we think about Meta, who's probably in the lead on pushing the metaverse to happen, they're probably the platform with the biggest issues in terms of trust. And so it's a question of, they want to be in the lead in this space, but are people going to trust them and want to be on any metaverse platform that they create, especially when there are going to be many alternatives? And so they're bad actors everywhere. They're bad actors in real life, and I think that's not going to be. There's not going to be any difference in the metaverse. I think the question is, when we as consumers have choices in terms of where we want to spend time, and if there are multiple places, where are we going to go? It's probably going to be the platforms and virtual worlds and spaces where we feel like our interests are most aligned with the creators. So I would just say, it's really up to us to shape which platforms win, and I think it will be driven a lot by trust.
Yeah, and I'm just going to quickly add, I think I'm going to bring this back to something I said earlier, but mindset, right? Investing in your own personal mindset, not to be selfish, but I do think that it starts with each individual. We can think of the world as something that lacks opportunity, or we can think of the world with infinite opportunities. And what are we going to do with those opportunities? And I think each of us has to take ownership for what we do online or in person. And that's the true work, in my opinion, whether you're creative, you're in finance, you're in tech. I think we need to bring ourselves grounded a little bit better and recognize with a little bit of self-awareness that, it starts with our choices. Like you said, we can make it transactional and we can say it's a consumer decision, but we can also say it's a community decision, right? Maybe each one of us might have made a choice to be here today. And it just starts with one yes or one no. Very simple. So making things a little less complicated, I think, would be nice in the world. And I think that would lend to some of those issues being reduced quite a bit.
Well, thank you for all your questions, and thank you for these answers. That's a great note to end on. I just have to share that when we conceived the panel, we were talking about the fact that we were sort of coming out of the pandemic, and people were really looking for community because they weren't with their jerseys, they weren't with their groups, and we know that the metaverse is an opportunity to build community again. And I am incredibly grateful to this community of brilliant thinkers. Thank you for coming. And I hope we're here a year from now advancing this conversation and putting some action against the things we talked about today. So thank you very much. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Please feel free to stay for brunch and a drink. That was really great. Oh my God. You too.